Welcome into the DeFalco Files. I am SinCitySteve filling in for Matt Michaels. Yes, your eyes and ears are not deceiving you. I'm definitely being joined by the owner and creator of Future Stars of Wrestling, FSW here in Las Vegas, Mr. Joe DeFalco. Joe, how are you doing today, sir?
Much better now that I only have to hear about 15 seconds of that song. And it sounds like it says Dark Files when it starts off. It's like, was that supposed to say DeFalco Files?
AI is a wonderful thing at times. Other times, it's a pain. So
I think Matt secretly got paid a lot of money to have to play at least 2 minutes of the song every single week.
it wouldn't surprise me, man. Paying those royalty fees, get those artists out there, man.
Well, I want my cut at least. If I got to listen to it, my ears are bleeding.
Trust me, I feel you there. Well, let's just dive right into it, man. So obviously, we just wrapped up with a very, very big event for FSW, Calm Before the Storm. I've got the match, the card graphic up on the screen. So for those of you watching, you can kind of see just a refresher on the card. Joe, what were the biggest takeaways in your mind from this show, and how does this pivot us toward the Sweet 16th anniversary?
Well, we started at the top. The main event was Dante King versus Brett the Thread, a match a lot of people were excited to see. Brett moved to NorCal, so his time in FSW, it's a little harder because he's getting a lot of those West Coast bookings that are closer to home, but he always has a home in FSW and always wants to be a part of it. So despite the ending in that match with Braxton getting involved because he was looking for the winner, kind of helped set up a triple threat match for the anniversary show. So after which was the calm before the storm, because now we're leading into the big 16th anniversary and a few matches. Same thing, Zamaya and Maserati. Zamaya walked out with the victory thanks to MK and Koa. And, this is the first time Zamaya in an FSW show. I guess they had an alliance at the Future Legend Women's, and I guess they talked. And now she's part of the MK Army, and because of that, they walked away with the victory, which is also setting up an intergender match at the anniversary. Remy Marcel, who we haven't seen wrestle in FSW in a bit, he's been doing a lot of the backstage work, training class and stuff on Fridays. But as Jake put it out there, two pretty much FSW originals. Between Sugar Brown, Clutch, Remy, that it seems like the old school always seems to find a way to find each other. And now we got Maz and Remy against Zamaya and Kevin Koa, who we hadn't seen in a couple months. And, he's done some good things. He won the PCW Arizona Championship a couple weeks ago. So the MK Armies is really the strongest it's ever been. He now has the Nevada State and the tag team champions, as well as now Zamaya. Koa still has Hero Lou, who we've seen very infrequently, but he's still part of it. And the tag champs, they escaped. They kept the belts after a disqualification against Mariachi Montana, which I'm not sure is good for them, because now we're having a fatal four-way for the tag belts. And the Suavecitos, who have the victory over the Mariachis, but they couldn't make the show on the 31st. So even though they lost, the Mariachis got a shot. And then Sky High, who lost the qualifier, they're walking into a title match. So we're featuring some ex-FSW champions added to that, as Transcendence is out there to prove very quickly that they are one of the best tag teams here in FSW. They beat Lights Camera Faction a few weeks back. They beat Makeshift Chemistry for the belts. So it's interesting to see their rise.
Oh, yeah.
And then we had Cash in the Case qualifiers. Jay Vidal, he advanced. Evan Daniels in his first Cash in the Case tried something different, since we always pitch how you can cash in any championship. But we never really have, hey, this tag team is going in. So I did a tag team qualifier, which I thought would be cool, kind of based off when we do the Rumble show. It's like everybody's an individual, which I get. But the thing is, if you're in a group or you're in a tag team, who cares if you're number 2 and number 13? You don't get to work together. So my idea was, hey, you know what? Let's put the faction come out all at once. Let's put a tag team. Let them come out together and work together. And then if it gets to the final 2, you know, I remember as a kid, it was really exciting watching the Rumble, and Axe and Smash were like 1 and 2, and Demolition had to fight each other. You know, that was cool stuff. And it's like, you got to try to enhance whatever you can on these shows. And the anniversary is the biggest show for FSW ever. Yeah. And this is our 16th one. So Matt Vandergriff looked like he was going to be penciled in, but he got hurt. So we had a wild card, and Bateman, who has a very, very long resume. So we thought it would be very interesting to have him in that match. And then also JKM, who's been very, very exciting in his short time here. And, you know, I'm a sucker for a guy doing cool shit off the ladder. So I'm pretty sure JKM is that guy. So we're excited about the cash in the case, but usually features guys that storyline wise, you know, we got Ice and we got Limelight. They've been going back and forth for months. Iron Man match, main event. We got Brittany, number 1 contender. She's had her chances. She's gotten injured. Gypsy Mac took advantage of an opportunity. You know, that's sold itself. And then we got Duke Lawrence, who came out for a Future Shock after the show, claiming to, you know, thank the crowd and making them aware of what he had coming up. And he was shocked and offended by the actions of young Bodie. So you want to talk about a David versus Goliath. You want to talk about a Kevin Nash versus a Rey Mysterio. The question was, was Duke going to wrestle that mattered? And it's like, wow, this is an interesting matchup that I want to see.
Oh, yeah.
So Bodie, the young 18-year-old, taking on a 400-pound monster who, in reality, nobody has been able to stop.
No, not at all, man. And, you know, I think that you set the stage very perfectly for the 16th anniversary show. As we can see, I mean, you know, everybody extremely well represented on the match graphic or the card graphic right there. And obviously we'll hit on this, but the 16th anniversary show is going to come to you live Sunday, June 15th at 5 p.m. from the Veil Pavilion at the Silverton. And let's get in. Let's talk about this show, man. There's a lot to be looking forward to with this, and there's no better place to start than with the main event. You had mentioned Ice and Danny Limelight. They've been going back and forth for months. And yeah, why not do it in an Iron Man match? That way it's able to showcase everybody's talents and just really make for a great story, as well as a great exhibition of what they can do in that ring.
Well, you know, Limelight's been champion for a year, and toward the end of his run, he's really been slighted, he feels, and I could see it. Fairly. But we have to promote what we can promote. And even though Ice was no longer champion, you know, he got ID'd, you know, part of the WWE program. So now all of a sudden, he's getting featured on the flyers that Danny Limelight, the heavyweight champion, is on.
Yeah, and it's kind of
Ice Williams, but he's the guy. And he's the hometown guy. You know, ID, we're the only school that has 2. We don't use Oasis that often, but Ice Williams has been a mainstay since he started training at FSW. So, of course, we're going to feature a guy who in that time frame now has become one of the most popular wrestlers here in FSW. So you got that, and then we have the benefit for Bay, and now all of a sudden Hammerstone and Cross come back, who have been probably the greatest champions along with Chris. And again, he feels slighted. He's in a 5-man scramble with the title on the line. He wins that match. And then he tries to get involved in the main event because he's not sniffing the main event. And, on top of that, he's never beaten Ice Williams before. The first time we really had him was when we came back from the pandemic and we did the 2-night anniversary show. He shined in a scramble match or the Rumble match. And then he wrestled Ice for the No Limits Championship at the time. And Ice won that fairly easily, to be honest with you. I bust Limelight's balls all the time where it's like, wow, I never watched that match and thought there was any chance that you were going to win that match. And, he turned it around, but he still has that on his plate that now he has never beaten Ice Williams. Now, all of a sudden, Ice Williams has eclipsed him and he's not even the champion. And then you got Gregory Sharp, who has the cash in the case. And that's the final day that he can cash. They call, Sharp the world fighter, and there's a reason for it. You see him all over the place. The company in Africa, and Sharp made an appearance there, and he was in Korea this year and Vietnam, and he goes all over the world. So he's not at as many shows. So, can he cash in the tag titles? Sure, but he doesn't have very many friends. So I kind of throw that one out there. And I guess there's a shot, but does he really want to go after Duke Lawrence for the Nevada State? Yeah, maybe. Dante
You
King.
wouldn't want to go after Duke Lawrence, though, outside of Bodie.
Exactly. So, so now he's got an Iron Man match. And if he did beat Ice Williams in that, he'll know. Because if Gregory Sharp's cashed in already, then I guess no sweat. Yeah. But if Gregory Sharp has not cashed in and it's the main event, he is just waiting for the right time. So not only does Limelight or Ice have to go 30 minutes, they may have to go on even longer for that show to walk out of there at the anniversary show champion. So there's a lot going on. And, we're really excited about it. Sweet 16, man, go down the list of all the independent wrestling companies around. And you could start with a number that in the thousands, I would guarantee you. But I guarantee you it's less than 100 that have been doing it for as long as we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely a lot of moving parts. Like what you mentioned, that main event is going to, honestly, it's going to set the building on fire. I know that I was in the building for the last few events, and, you mentioned that scramble match. And I was in the exact same belief as you. I didn't think that there was any chance that he was walking out with that championship, but he found a way to do it. And I think that that's really what's defined him during his entire FSW run, to be honest, is, Danny Limelight, you love him or you hate him. He's so polarizing, but the guy finds a way to make it happen. And he doesn't, pull any punches with it. He's going to do whatever it takes. So that's pretty awesome stuff there. Speaking of a lot of moving parts, we got the cash in the case. We briefly touched on it. In there, you've got Watson, JKM, Fresco, Jay Vidal, Bateman, and Evan Daniels. And, you mentioned a wild card being thrown in. I don't think that there's ever been a better description for Bateman than a wild card. That guy defines what that term is, man. But all in all, you've got 6 guys in this match, all of whom could win this thing and walk out with that case. And it definitely opens the door for some interesting stuff, especially you had mentioned earlier. If you do have the Lights Camera Faction guys there at the end, will they, go for a split glory, or will one of them choose to claim it for themselves? So there's the added allure of that.
Well, right. Watson's a guy who's had a few opportunities at the No Limits and then Nevada State. And with all the infighting and making up and all that stuff with the faction, and they're seemingly in a good place right now, Watson was probably the breakout star of the faction this year. And he had great success in the singles division. So the question becomes, hey, if Watson gets the case, it ain't Watson and Fresco's case. Whoever gets the case gets the case. Now, we're looking at it as they're in as a tag team, but that doesn't mean they're thinking they're in as a tag team. Fresco, he's a guy who hasn't really had a lot of the singles matches, and Braxton, he has, but he's worked with Ice, and they did it, and they were in it together last year. But they both had the idea because Ice was basically a wild card added, and Braxton was kind of stunned as he earned his way in. He was looking at that as his breakout moment, and all of a sudden he had to compete with Ice. And, Ice probably wasn't looking to win the case and go after the tag belts. So this one, these guys went in as a tag. Even though they spent part of the year apart, Fresco and Watson have always been the tag team of Lights Camera Faction. So it'll be interesting because if one does get it and then chooses to go after a singles title, I'm not sure how that relationship will continue to be copacetic with them if Fresco wins and then it's like, oh, yeah, cool, I'm going after the No Limits title. Yeah,
exactly, man. It's definitely a lot of moving parts in that one. And who knows? Maybe this could be the final cut for Lights Camera Faction. But let's pivot just a little bit here and let's talk about the women's championship match. Gypsy Mac and Brittany Brooks for the FSW Women's Championship. Obviously, this one, dare I say, either woman could walk out with that championship. I personally am looking forward to this match. I think it's going to be a great match, not just a great women's match, but a great match as a whole. And I think this has the potential of stealing the show.
Well, the deal is in this one that, the women's title, I always talk about it. It's almost like feeling jinxed. And there's always issues. Earlier the year, Maserati wins the championship. Yeah. And then she gets injured. Yeah. And she has to relinquish the belt. And Brittany's in line to get a title shot. And right before that, she tears her ACL. And she can't get the title shot. And Gypsy Mac, who, she was involved in a lot of stuff with Dante King, her boyfriend, and being, getting involved with Damian Drake and Raw Reese. And she was kind of basically fighting a lot of guys in that matter. She got laid out at the Silverton. It went viral when Raw Reese hit the BBC from the stage, and people were like, "Oh my God!" He almost took her head off, and then she got her comeuppance by throwing him out of the Rumble. So she has been, like that scrappy dog that she doesn't give up. And then she took advantage of the opportunity. Maz was out. Now Brittany was out, and she wins the championship in a 4-way match with quality opponents like Jada Stone was in there. Well, she actually beat Alice Blair after the fact. Alice Blair won the title in a 4-way, and then Gypsy Mac got the title. So she did what she had to do. And, things got a little heated. They got a little snippy, as I like to say, between Brittany and Gypsy. And they both made very valid points. The fact of the matter is, Gypsy at that time wasn't considered the top contender. Rochelle had the belt, and Brittany was going after it, and she got hurt, and the match got changed up, and it became a 3 or 4-way where Maz ended up winning the belt, even though she was there to kind of protect Rochelle to help her keep the belt. And Brittany wasn't around, and then Maz gets hurt. So Gypsy was kind of an afterthought in that process. But her winning the title, she has been lights out. And, I've talked about from when she moved here a couple of years ago from New Mexico to where she is now, she is far and away a top talent now. She was not. She was not on very many FSW shows. She worked her ass off to get where she was. So Brittany taking some of those shots, I'm not sure how warranted, they were. Gypsy made a point, which again, that's how Gypsy feels, that it seems like Brittany Brooks was always afforded that opportunity. And the thing was, Brittany was 18 years old. She came from Phoenix, but she was highly regarded. So it wasn't being gifted things. It was more like, hey, you know what? This is an up-and-comer. WWE's looking at her. She's getting extra work. And I'm trying to do what's best for business. And at that time, what's best for business is getting Brittany Brooks on shows over Gypsy Mac. But now you fast forward it, and it's like now they're on equal footing. So now, you can let all the talking happen, but let the best woman win. Brittany looks at Gypsy as a placeholder, and Gypsy looks at Brittany as, this bratty, brash young girl who seemingly, which she didn't, because Brittany Brooks worked hard for what she's done.
Oh, yeah.
She's torn 2 knees and still at the top of her game. So, again, the titles mean a lot. Gypsy Mac winning the FSW championship's a big deal. Brittany Brooks, we had a conversation this past week, about how this was the place she wanted to be at. And when she got here, it was pretty disappointing, not only losing the ladder match, but then looking like she was going to get that opportunity and then touring her knee again. So this match is definitely going to be one that a lot of people are going to be paying attention to, because now Maz is back, and with her and Zamaya is another one who we brought in very early through our Phoenix connections, and she is become a champion in a lot of places. She's somebody you don't want to mess with. I always give her that Bull Nakano.
Yes.
But she's the guy who can go toe-to-toe with a lot of the guys. Like, she's the China of the FSW women's division. Like, you don't want to mess with Zamaya. She'll whoop your ass.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, man. And the funny thing is, the very first time that I saw Zamaya, I thought of the comparison of Bull Nakano. Speaking of that match, let's just talk about that right now. Maserati and Remy Marcel going up against Zamaya and Kevin Koa in the special attraction tag team match. This one has a lot of combustibility, man. This thing could set the tone for quite a bit. And, you mentioned Maserati possibly getting back into the mix for that women's championship. This one definitely could be very solid as well.
Well, yeah, Maz in reality, after what happened, I get it. Brittany technically won. Zamaya was not laying out Brittany for Maz. You know what I mean? It was like Brittany was the first one there. She gets hit, and Maz unfortunately gets disqualified. That's the way it is. I think with enough politicking, if that was how it was wanted, Maz could have convinced me to make it a triple threat match at the anniversary, but she specifically said she wanted Zamaya on the 31st. Now, I think if she would have beaten Zamaya on the 31st, she may have now come into the office, knocked on the door, and asked about, maybe getting into that triple threat. But after she got laid out by Koa, she didn't seemingly get her revenge. So I think she's okay with seeing who the winner of Gypsy and Brittany is. But, Maz, as the ex-champion who never lost her belt, is rightfully you would think next in line, but Zamaya has now beaten her. If Zamaya beats her again, how do you not put Zamaya into that mix?
Yeah.
So the women's division is heating up. And then we recently got 2 new additions who both work for AEW, Trisha Dora, who's the mainstay on the Ring of Honor shows, and Layla Gray. And at that point, after doing the Future Legend Women's Tournament, I made the announcement yesterday, talked with MK, who's been majorly behind it, that we're going to do a show, hopefully in July or August, the Future Stars of Women's Wrestling, and bring that back, because the talent base on the West Coast is just through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, you know what? Let's give the opportunity, because in most cases everybody complains, there's no women's match. There's only one women's match. We got 2 on the anniversary. But you got to understand, there's 50 guys and there's 6 women. So unfortunately, that's the way it breaks, that you're going to end up having more men's matches just because there's more men on the roster, So if we can do that, maybe throw in a mixed tag, break it up a little bit. Everybody's always talked about those intergender tag belts and things. You never know what we're going to try to do. We're going to try to be innovative. We're going to try to be interesting. We're always trying to come up with something. We got Mania. Looks like it's coming back next year. So, we're always trying to throw some stuff against the wall. Title Match Network, we've been working with a little bit. And they kind of, even though they put everything out there, they're really hype on a lot of the women's stuff. So we think we can run a women's show through them that will get us a little more notoriety, publicity, exposure, etc., and maybe do the women's live stream just specifically with them. And and the main shows on Triller, because we're non-exclusive. You know what I mean? We like with the Future Legend Women's. And what we did was we aired it live on Triller as we were making the relationship with Title Match. And 30 days later, they purchased the rights to air it. Triller can still air it. Title Match can still air it. So more revenue streams. And that was kind of the key thing. They pay better. That's the bottom line. They pay better for women's shows than Triller. So it's like, you know what? Well, now budgets are going to be higher for the women's show. That's the thing. Maybe a lot of people don't or aren't aware of that. But, you can get a lot of guys for a certain price. Can't get a lot of women for a certain price because the talent pool is less to choose from. Sure, you might be able to get somebody cheap, but then you have to fly them in from Florida for $400. So it isn't cheap anymore. So, we're working on the logistics. I actually had a meeting earlier today with the people from Triller, because there were certain issues that, communication is an important thing to me. And I shouldn't have to send 3 emails over a 3-week period to find out where my check is, and, you could say, hey, we're working on this. We know we're a little bit behind. Well, that's great. I'm not like I need my money by today, but it's like, how about you give me an explanation? You let me know what's going on instead of me searching around. Hey, who do I need to talk to? Oh, I think you could. Nobody knows. Like, this is a multi-million-dollar company. And, I'm asking about my money, and it's, a couple $1,000s. Well, that's kind of important to me.
Yeah, it matters.
And when I haven't been paid since January for December shows, and now we're into June, you could tell me about how you changed your policy. Well, number one, I have a contract. So if you changed your policy about when payment is, at worst, you need to contact me and let me know and be like, oh, well, we're on a 90-day thing. Well, we weren't before. When did this happen? And by the way, January to now June isn't 90 days. We're at like 140 days if you want to count the end of January. So February, March, April, May, that's 4 months. So that's 120 days. And I'm still not being paid yet. And again, a lot of times, the money's small on the smaller shows, but hey, WrestleMania week, the Chris Bay show. There's a good chunk of change that I got bills to pay.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And it bears repeating that right now is a huge time for FSW because obviously there are a lot of irons in the fire. There's the WWE ID stuff. There's all of the eyes that were on the promotion during WrestleMania weekend last year and coming up next year as well. So that blows my mind that Triller is 100 and some odd days behind on payment. But I don't know, man. It's maybe you just need to send Duke Lawrence over there and show them what's going on because
I don't know. Maybe I need to send Bodie there. Who knows?
And so let's talk about that FSW Nevada State Championship match. You got Duke Lawrence with MK taking on Bodie, and you touched on it. Bodie decided to go up there and quite literally poke the beast, calm before the storm, and decided to ruffle some feathers and take him down with a Hurricane Rana and make his intentions known.
Well, yeah, the show was basically over. Bodie defended the Future Legend Men's Championship that he recently won by beating Vandegrift WrestleMania weekend at the Future Legend Women's Tournament as the break show. And if you get a chance, watch that match. Bryce Saturn was involved also. And who was the fourth guy? It was Vandegrift. It was Bodie. It was Bryce Saturn and Marcus Mathers.
Yeah.
There you go. And I'll tell you what, that was my favorite match of the entire weekend. And tremendous outing. So Bodie was asking if he could defend it in an open challenge at Future Shock. So I'm like, absolutely. And we did that, and the show was over, and all of a sudden Duke's music hit, not sure what was going on. And he ended up laying out Oliver Canaday. And Bodie wasn't even, Bodie was out of the picture. So I don't know Duke's intentions, but I think Bodie felt that Duke infringed on his time. And maybe he was also looking to save Oliver. And he kind of got back in the ring. And as you said, gave the Hurricane Rana, took Duke off his feet. And that fired up MK, and that fired up Duke, who claims he was just there to thank everybody for coming out and let them know that he was going to be at Calm Before the Storm on the 31st. A lot of people don't believe that story, but whatever it is, the challenge was put out. Bodie was not at the show at Calm Before the Storm, but at the show he was at, obviously he caught it on Triller. And he immediately contacted us and accepted the challenge. So, Veil Pavilion is where, Bodie defeated Danny Limelight for the No Limits Championship. It was also the place where Kenny King turned on young Bodie, and he lost the championship within about a minute. So, so it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what this match could be, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because Bodie's going to use the speed. He's going to use the high flying. But, man, it's going to be crazy because nobody's been able to stop Duke.
And the crazy thing, too, is, obviously you mentioned the David and Goliath kind of story with this. But, obviously, there's the inherent visual. I don't think that you could have two polar opposites in the ring with each other than what we're going to get at the 16th, for sure.
Yeah. So, I think it's a match that on paper, it's like, holy shit, man. But it's also like that crazy car wreck that when you see it, you're slowing down to watch it. So, we're talking about Bodie. And we're saying this could be one of the biggest upsets in FSW history, but we're talking about Bodie. So if somebody could do it, man, many people, Bodie is on his way to bigger and brighter things. But I'll tell you what, this could end badly for Bodie.
Could. I think that's the odds-on bet right there, to be honest. Yeah, man, it'll be interesting for sure. And I think that one other match that we've got to talk about as well is going to be for the No Limits Championship. It's that triple threat. You've got Dante King, you got Brett the Threat, you got Joe Braxton in there. And yeah, all three of these guys are very unpredictable. And that's kind of what the No Limits Championship is all about. Leaving it all out there. And it's this one's going to be a sight to see for sure.
Yeah, definitely a true contrast in styles,
Yes.
all three of them. Brett's a guy who could tap them both out at the same time. You know what I mean? And, Braxton has gotten some big victories that sometimes you're like, oh, I can't believe it. And he's pulled them out. And Dante is another one. When they moved with Gypsy, he was a guy who was lucky to get on Future Shock shows. And he put in the time, he put in the work. You'd see him in training a lot. And he's really perfected his craft and has gotten himself to where, man, he finally got a championship. So he don't want to relinquish that anytime soon. And Brett's gotten championships in numerous other companies. He would love nothing better than the place where he got his start to get one.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that one definitely I think is a sleeper match. I think that it could go in any direction in that one. Speaking of multi-man matches or multi-team matches, unfortunately we don't have a graphic for this one. But as you mentioned, there's going to be the four-way for the tag titles, and obviously a lot of moving pieces. This really came to a head with calm before the storm. Take us inside of that match a little bit and set the stage for it for us.
I'll tell you what, man, the Mariachis, they're fresh off their victory at Dodger Stadium.
Dodger Stadium, man. Yeah. That got a lot of press.
Yeah, and it wasn't not only wrestling at Dodger Stadium, but it was also beating Bad Dude Tito and Che Cabrera.
Exactly.
A team that I consider at least a top 2 or 3 tag team on the West Coast.
Yeah.
I'm big fans of Che and Tito, who, I put together years ago. They got their start as a tag team in FSW, coming from Santino Brothers.
Yep.
I felt that they would be a force to be reckoned with. You can go back and check out shows from the Silverton when we coined them the Pistoleros. And it was Che and Tito versus the Gods of War, which was Hammerstone and Graves and the following back then.
Yep.
And, that was an interesting tag division. And we're talking 10, 12 years ago. Yeah. And Tito and Che are just monsters now compared to what they were then. And they were really good back then. So
I'd love to see those two teams run it back at some point, to be honest with you.
We obviously, I got a soft spot in the heart for Tito and Che. It was just hard getting them both back at the same time. And obviously we've used Tito. You got involved with Danny Limelight for a little while, but he's a busy guy. Yeah. So, and it's hard. Same thing with the Suavecitos. They kind of left the nest and they've had huge success over the last couple of years. And they came back, they felt that. And again, being slighted brings a lot of people back. Brett the Threat slighted, the Suavecitos, seeing the success of the Mariachis, and they feel that they were given things that the Suavecitos didn't get. They forget about their shitty attitude, and that was kind of the reason why they didn't get certain things. But they're back. And since they have the victory over the Mariachis, well, they get inserted into that match. And Sky High, who have been hugely successful and former tag team champions, and they've been, they kind of help carry that tag team division. So, and then Bryce Saturn and Damian Desire, they're the new kids on the block. Bryce Saturn is very similar to what we're talking about with Watson. You know, I would call Bryce Saturn the breakout guy from here at FSW. He was a guy that you kind of seen around, and I needed a match for Future Shock. And it was a match you probably wouldn't have, but it was Ice Williams versus Bryce Saturn. And man, the eyes really opened up. And from when where I first saw him here in FSW to the next time, it was like, man, this guy has put himself physically in phenomenal shape. His work has been excellent. Hadn't heard him cut any promos. And then when I did, I'm like, wow, this guy could cut him with the best of them. And Damien Desire is another guy who, you know, when we first talked with both of them, I gave him the truth. It's like, you know, there's a lot of other companies around, and you guys wrestle for a lot of other companies around. Your value to me doesn't really help when you're wrestling over there this week and you're wrestling over there tomorrow. And it's hard enough when my own guys do it. So I kind of got to grin and bear it in that situation. So I'm not going to grin and bear it for some guy from California or Arizona. I don't really need you. I don't need more guys. You know, it's great to have a lot of talent, but we talk about with AEW that their roster, when they weren't using Brian Cage and they weren't using Lance Hoyt and they weren't using Wardlow and they weren't using it's who they aren't using instead of who they are using. Exactly. So it's like, you know what? It's tough enough when you got 36 guys for 23 spots. And it's like, sorry. Well, Damien Desire said, you know what? Giving him my notice. I ain't working anywhere else. I want to be an FSW. And then later on, that came to Bryce Saturn. And after he put up the things that he did, I had no choice. It's like, this guy is too good to not be part of FSW, Future Stars of Wrestling. Because at the end of the day, now WWE, Gabe Sapolsky, he uses Bryce Saturn because he saw him and met him in FSW. And he got to be part of WrestleMania weekend and be an extra and being utilized. You're not normally going to be an extra unless there's something about you that they like. Okay? And Braxton got the gig, and Bryce Saturn got the gig, and Brittany Brooks got the gig, and Maserati got the gig, and Bodie got to be on the ID show through my recommendation. Gabe was looking for a few of them. And, of course, Bodie's on Gabe's ID watch, as is Brittany Brooks. And when they did the NXT show in Vegas, all the people working around the end was Gabe hitting me up for the extras because Gabe books the extras. So not only does he run the ID program, he books the extras. So that's a good person to have on the speed dial.
Oh, yes.
And that's what happens when you become a part of FSW. I don't say, well, here's a list of my students that you can use. Here's a list of my best people. What are you looking for? What do you need? You know, when it comes to my connections with Conan and AAA and wherever else it is. When he needed somebody, I got Zamaya booked. I hit him up about Brittany. He used Maz, who then, hey, and I sent them, hey, here's these guys, the mariachis. He hit me up about Santana Jackson. I had to broker that deal because he didn't know him. Hey, can you talk to Santana for me? And Santana got booked at AAA in Tijuana on a bunch of shows. And it's like, you know, I go outside the box. I don't just say, okay, I'm promoting the FSW show. If I could feel that these guys are going to get that opportunity, as it was with Hammerstone and Bay and Cross, if you go somewhere and you don't get signed by WWE, there's a good chance I can still use you. So when Hammerstone went to MLW, great. When Bay went to TNA, Jay Vidal, all these guys, TNA, great. I could still use you. And they're still thankful for what I had done for them, that they don't give me that, hey, I'm a Major League Wrestler guy now. You need to pay. This is my rate. I'll give you $50 off. No, this is my rate, and I'll give you a much better discount, Joe. So doing that has really been beneficial to me and the company since day one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, you know, speaking of giving people opportunities. As you had mentioned earlier, it was announced that the future stars of women's wrestling will be returning, and limited tickets are available. So let's talk for a little bit about that right before we wrap up. What can people expect from the FSWW?
Well, the thing is, on a regular FSW show, as we said, there's only so many matches we can get, and believe it or not, there's way more than 4 wrestlers, women wrestlers in FSW, but 4 of them will be performing at the anniversary show. And they're probably our top 4. And that would be Maz, who's been with us forever, Brittany Brooks, rising star, Gypsy Mac, my champion. And then we got Zamaya, who's another rising star. But as I said, we now have Trisha Dora and Layla Gray from AEW. Layla Gray sent me a message. She's gotten the okay from AEW because she was doing that at OVW when they lived in the Midwest. That normally you gotta, okay, I'm going to work. Now it's like, hey, when FSW does a show, I want to be a part of it. So it isn't like going through the process every single time. Obviously, if she's booked there, we can't use her. But they're going to be available to us. And then you got the Brooke Havocs of the world who live up in California. And a couple that we used at Future Shock, Fallon Gray and Taylor York, and also Olivier, who moved from Oklahoma to be with us and trains with us. But there's also MK, who money's no object to MK. If he hit me up yesterday, I'm like, hey, I'm like, if there's anybody you're thinking, he's like, oh, well, Sarah Logan, Valhalla just got released. You think she'd work the show? It's like, well, if you want to pay her, I guess she will. You know what I mean? But the talent pool is endless.
Oh, yeah.
Of who we can use. You know, in the past, we've done that. I know MK used Estrella, somebody, she worked like AAA in Mexico, and he brought her in. And we also had, I forgot her name, but she was in WWE forever. And she's the one with the English accent. And I forgot her name. But she's been a mainstay in professional wrestling, and we've used her a few times. And we've also used Taya, who was our women's champion.
Yep.
So there's a lot of talent, you know. And I've already been hit up by numerous women wrestlers. We got the connections. Maya World, one of the best women wrestlers in Texas. Maggie Lee, who was at the women's tournament, is a TNA signee. And Jasmine Allure and Carolina Cruz, who worked for NXT. So we've already set the table for them to know who we are and who I am. And now if we need to do a show, Jada Stone, who's worked now numerous shows for us. So, you know, I saw Rochelle River came back during Mania week. You know, obviously she lives here. You know, she took some time off after she lost the title. So it's a who's who of women talent that now 8 matches, you're talking 16 to 20 women being booked on a show. So it gives them an opportunity instead of, hey, let's just do another student show or whatever it is. It's one thing about FSW, you're going to have different variety. You have the levels of shows, Future Shock. You know, you're going to have people who've wrestled 1 match, no matches, 6 matches, all the way to the Meccas where you're bringing in, you know, TNA and AEW and, you know, talent from New Japan, or if we're lucky with like, you know, Karrion Kross, and being able to use that top tier talent. So, you know, that was part of the conversation. Like, how do we differentiate? Because sometimes you see on Triller and it's like, yeah, the numbers were similar to Future Shock, which is a bunch of guys and girls who had almost no matches. Yet we'll do another show like Calm Before the Storm. And I saw the numbers and they were a little bit better. And I don't know, is that because more people were aware of FSW because of the Chris Bay show. So when they see FSW's running, and it wasn't a student show, because the numbers right off the bat first day were a few hundred more. Well, that's a pretty big difference.
Oh yeah.
From 300 viewers to 500 viewers. That's people putting in time and effort. Go on Triller on Saturday at 7:00 and see how many options you have. Yeah. Being GCW is their mainstay, and GCW usually runs probably 10 to 15 shows a month. It's crazy.
They're doing stuff all the time. Yeah, it's insane.
So it's like, you know what? The fact that 500 people spent their couple of hours watching one of our shows, I'm a wrestling fan.
Yes.
I'm picky. I know when a show sucks. I know when a show's good. I know when a show's great. And I know when a show's okay. So I'm people, oh, that was the best show ever. Yeah, you hear that. You hear that all the time. Somebody always says it's the best show ever. No, it isn't. Not even close. But you know what? The fans are the fans, and there are things that they are engaged. They love certain people, no matter what. There's the guys who love women's wrestling, that they can do no wrong. That if the same spot was done by a guy, they'd be yelling, "You fucked up, you suck," whatever it is. A woman could do that same spot and be like, "Oh, that was the greatest thing ever." So everybody, it's the spice of life. It's like when people come in to train, it's like tall, short, fat, skinny. There's places for everybody in professional wrestling. Yokozuna was 600 pounds. He was the champion. Shawn Michaels was 185 pounds. He was the champion. Guys that are 7 feet tall and were champions, and Rey Mysterio at 5'4" was a champion. You can't say that about a lot of other sports. Yeah. Sorry, there's never been a great 5'4" quarterback in the NFL. He was about 5'9", and he was a great quarterback that never really got a great opportunity because of his height, and nobody wanted to generate their offense around him.
That's the thing. And, it's weeding through the anomalies and actually getting through to, the vast majority. But I'll tell you, man, it seems like as if right now there have not been more eyes on FSW just from an outside perspective. Between the WWE ID program, the benefit show that was done for Chris Bay, as I had mentioned, the Mania stuff.
We had literally millions of views regarding FSW from the start of when we were going to do the Bay show to Mania. Millions of views all over. And like I said, with the Chris Bay show, hey, if we do a cup, man, I think we did about 2,900 views for FSW GCW 2. And that was, I think, the most that we did when we went into that Triller Plus program, because the others were pay-per-views and buys. So in 2022, I believe that's when we started. So 2,900 views was the record. I think the House of Glory show did a couple of thousand, while the Chris show did upwards of 15,000 views. Oh, so that was shattered, we got a couple thousand for almost a couple thousand for the WWE ID show. But that Chris Bay show really lit up everything. And it's crazy to me because if you took out the benefit for Bay and put the card out there, believe me, it was fantastic. But we've had Mecca shows. Or the show we did with Pro Wrestling Revolver, I was going through some stuff to try to send to Title Match Network. And it was like, man, Josh Alexander versus Tom Lawler and Gringo Loco and Joey Janela and Hammerstone. Man, there have been some big time mecca matches, and John Morrison and Cross and Dreamer and all these guys. And it was just the fact that it was by putting Chris Bay's name in there, like almost everybody I think was sitting there watching Triller for it, because we've had shows that were probably quality wise, I wouldn't say as good, but pretty close. And it was nowhere near the numbers that they did, which is, saying a lot for people's appreciation for Chris. And like we said, we handed Chris a check for over $25,000. Yeah. Because all the wrestlers wrestled for free. All we had to do was cover some hotels and flights for a handful of the wrestlers. But wow, you got to see Rich Swann and Ricochet.
Yeah.
Again. That should have been Brian Cage until he got hurt. And if you don't think that would have been one of the coolest matches this year.
Yeah.
And after there was the injury to Cage, I didn't want to shake up the card. But like I told people, I wanted to do Ricochet and Swan versus the Rascals.
Oh.
Because that would have been a never before done match.
Yeah.
But it was like, because of the alliances and Shane Strickland in AEW and who's in TNA, you would never get those matches ever again. And it was like, wow. It was similar to when I used to do the IWF shows in Phoenix. I got carte blanche of, hey, here are the guys. Who do you want to use? And it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do Ricochet against Austin Aries. And we had the Young Bucks versus Shane Strickland and Trevor Lee, because Swan and AR Fox got hurt. And I had, Tommaso Ciampa wrestling Drew McIntyre. And it was like a who's who. And this was the coolest show I ever got to do. You wish the circumstances were better, obviously. Loved, but, hopefully when we do the Chris Bay Returns benefit show,
yes,
then, we could do something as similar as that. So, as a wrestling fan, going to my great grandmother's at, 9 years old to watch Spanish language television from the Olympic Auditorium in LA when I lived in New York, because she watched the Spanish channel, watching guys like Chavo Guerrero Sr. and Terry Funk and Roddy Piper in like 1973. Wow. Who would have thought, it was from the first Mesquite show to having Kevin Nash walking into my ring with an FSW t-shirt. It's amazing that the kid who loved wrestling growing up has gotten to live all these things that have happened. It's something that, that is the bucket list. Yeah. And now it's trying to do things that, compare in any way. Oh, great. We got a Future Shock show coming up with 87 people, and none of the students sold any tickets. And the new students don't even show up to help, that aren't good enough to be on shows. And it makes you wonder, man, why am I wasting my time doing this? Then all of a sudden it's the Chris Bay show, or it's the ID thing, or it's Karrion Kross, saying hugely kind words for what he considers things that I did for him, the appreciation that the Hammerstones and the Bays and a lot of these guys that, hey, if it wasn't for Joe, you know what I mean? And it's like, man, it puts a smile on your face and says, hey, you know what? Maybe all that hard work was worth it. Because, you're like the Vince McMahon of Vegas. It's like, yeah, and I got no fucking money to show for it. And it's like, not really wanting to be called that anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, read the room.
For years, it was like, hey, it was a cool thing to say.
Oh, yeah.
That, hey, because kind of running Vegas, whatever it is, as they like to say. But it's like, it's a big different story. Like when you see now when they signed a deal and it's like, hey, they're getting $200 million a show to run in Saudi.
Which is insane.
It's like, hey, we made 200 on a show. All right. We didn't lose money.
Well, let's go ahead and just recap really quick. So the 16th anniversary show coming to you live Sunday, June 15th at 5 p.m. from the Veil Pavilion at the Silverton. You can catch it on Triller, and maybe you'll get paid on that before 2026, Joe. Maybe.
We hope so. But, it's going to be a big show. Front row are moving. Some of my regulars, they just hit me up. My guy, Eddie, hey, we got 11. And then he hit me up today. Hey, we're up to 13, waiting on a couple more. And, front row's moving quick. So if you want them, my regulars know if they hit me up, I'll save them the fees because Silverton will try to gouge you, Okay. But if you want to go through the SilvertonCasino.com site, you can get the tickets there, but always front row is the one that's going to move the most. We probably got about 20 or 30 left, and that's not me getting my guarantees from the people that I know are probably coming. They're just waiting on putting in numbers. So usually we try to cut off at around 90 because it really squishes that front row together. At the Chris Bay show, I think we did 102 because I wasn't turning down somebody who wanted a front row. So, absolutely. But yeah, if you want front row, 2 weeks away, Sunday, June 15th, I guess, no matter what it is, I always seem to pick the holiday. We did No Escape last year, or it was on Easter Sunday. Mm-hmm. Might have been this year. I don't know.
Yeah. Everything blends together. But yeah, that I think last year was, yeah.
Yeah, last year was Easter Sunday. We didn't this year because it was Mania week. So, but yeah. And now, and Father's Day, I think, is the second year in a row we're doing the anniversary on Father's Day. So, but it is what it is. Great present. Get it for Dad.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a huge card. And the one thing about the anniversary show generally is we draw one of our biggest crowds, and that's generally the show that features all the FSW talent. And it isn't a mecca, and it isn't where we bring in a bunch of people. It is tried and true, the true stars of FSW. So, we're always looking for some surprises if we can get it. Saw Kenny King the other day. He was a little disappointed there wasn't a match for him. So Kenny King will be in the Nick Bockwinkel Memorial Battle Royal to open up the show. So
let's talk about that. I mean, do we have any kind of names that we can announce outside of Kenny King for that? Battle Royal?
Yeah, actually, I can give you a list right here.
Nice.
My guy Cisco, I gave him some of the list, and so what he did was, let me try to find it here on my messenger. But I gave him a list of some of the guys that we were going to be using. So he made up the card. So Kenny King, obviously, he's the biggest name so far.
Oh, yeah.
Newcomer Luke Curtis, who's been very impressive from the New Japan Dojo, stays out here. A lot of the Future Shock guys, the Oliver Candidates and Warren Moores and Adrian Raines, the Mere Morningstar, Jimmy Jack, Johnny Royal, Marcus Anderson, Ricky Tenacious will be in, Brandon G. There'll probably be a couple of women also in the Battle Royal. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Well, we're definitely looking forward to it. And, you hit the nail right on the head. Come out, see the stars, the future stars of wrestling, and truly see the future of the business. FSW has a pedigree established that this is where legends are born. So come out, support this promotion. And if you can't make it out to the Silverton, then check it out on Triller. Maybe Joe will get a check, like I said, by 2026 for this show. We'll see. But
we'll see.
And anyway, guys, thank you for hanging out with us this week. Until next time, guys, this is SinCitySteve. That's Joe DeFalco, and we will see you next time.
Matt who?
Matt what?
Huh?